specific mediation or consultation. There are a set of tools. You can use any ones that make sense to you at the time. There's no prescriptive use of the tools. You just use what you need, except that they're all integrated together in within the context of one specific mediation that you set up or a consultation. You can see we have document research, summarization, visualization, questionnaire design and analysis, the ability to get clients to prioritize their objectives and goals using an aspect of decision science called the analytical hierarchical process. The reason we use decision science is that we've defined the resolution of a dispute essentially as a group decision between two or more parties that have either different or opposing agendas, and therefore you can apply a lot of the methodologies for group decision making. Something from game theory called fair division of assets, litigation risk analysis, online negotiation, and the built-in support bot. The bots we built ourselves. These are not we're not leveraging other people's bots because we wanted to restrict what these things could actually do. Now, the things in white are what we'll try to show in the demonstration. Otherwise, this will be like drinking from a fire hydrant. You're bound to get wet, overwhelmed, possibly drown. So just a warning, there's a lot of information here. And before we go to the demonstration, and Claire will remind everyone before that we do have a discount code that you can use for a 20% discount. And that also includes, which I didn't tell Claire, 2 hours of free online training. And of course, when you register for the software, you get an initial 30 days of free trial before you have to use a credit card or something. Okay, so let's talk about visualization and the stuff we want to do today. So let's go right to, we log into the software and you can see there's mediations and consultations. And today we're going to look at the Foster dispute, which we've been going through. You can see, for instance, that when you set up the mediation, it takes maybe 5 minutes. You can give it a description, if you want, of the dispute. Give it a category. In this case, it's about divorce and separation. Put the parties in so they can register on the system, and that's about it. Now, at this point in the beginning of mediation, you don't know a lot about what it's about, so you can go to the document parts. And this is where the parties that have registered to be part of the mediation can upload documents if they want, or they can email them to you. You can upload them yourself. Mediator can also decide who can have access to the documents, which parties, who can see what, depending on who's registered on the system. And so that's all controlled by the mediator. What's to keep in mind here is that all of the tools are designed to either assist or augment the skills of the mediator, not to replace the mediator. And the AI tools are used in concert with the decision analytic tools so that you can keep yourself neutral. It's not going to go off and do things that you don't want it to do. And this way we've confined the use of AI to something that's more realistic in a way. Not to say that you couldn't go
Robert,
off.
I'm going to interrupt you really quick. Would you mind speaking up just a little bit? Somebody has some background noise and they were hoping you could speak louder.
Oh, really? Okay. Hold on. Let me try to fix my microphone. Hold on.
Thanks, sorry.
Let me see. I see what the problem is. Hold on. Let me go to Zoom. Maybe I can fix it real quick.
I don't think it was too bad. It just, you know.
All right. Maybe Is this sound any better?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you're just, yeah, if you just speak a little louder, yep, people are saying it sounds better. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. It might be just the microphone. Okay. So now we've uploaded some documents. We don't know what this is about. So we will go to the research assistant. And, a lot of times I get feedback from mediators that say, I get these documents an hour before I'm supposed to mediate, or I get them the night before. I got hundreds of pages. So we can use besides saying summarize or whatever, and you can see you can select whatever documents you've uploaded you want to look at. We can say, for instance, create a mind map of the dispute in enough detail so that all the issues are understood. So now we use the AI. And the reason we do this is, in case you haven't noticed, the average attention span of people has dropped to that of a goldfish, essentially. It's about 45 seconds from what it used to be in the 70s, which was 2 to 3 minutes. So people do not read, and a lot of times they're not even present. If you walked around, looked at people at dinner, they're somewhere else, right? And people don't read a lot and have a hard time comprehending. So what the software just did was go through the documents, the one that's been distributed by Claire, and create a mind map for you. So it shows something about the division of assets, some of the child support issues. Uh, it also shows things about the business ownership. And so you can kind of get an idea of all the aspects of the dispute. Um, and what's important here is that, again, this gives you a big picture of what's going on. You can then look at other areas that might be of more interest in detail. We can certainly do that. But it's also that we're essentially training a whole generation on 15-second TikTok videos, and their attention span has dropped tremendously, as well as the ability to read lots of documents and understand them. So we have to take that in consideration, and one of the big reasons why we like to draw pictures. So just so I don't have to keep typing, I created a few things to help understand this, right? So let's do this. Um, and now we're going to say, okay, create using a flowchart diagram, create a diagram from each child's perspective in a divorce and include certain factors like time spent with each parent and stuff like this. So now we want to look at the dispute or the divorce in terms of the child's view of what might be some of the issues. Again, there's not a lot of information in the fact pattern, so you're not going to get too much detail here, but you'll get kind of a rough idea of what to consider from the child's perspective in this case. So this takes a little bit of time. Uh, okay, so that's some of the stuff. But you can see you'll start drawing some basic diagrams. We can say, okay, can you read maybe redraw this in more detail. Again, it's all the support bot handles natural language, like most of them. And you're not too old to learn this, just so you understand that my first experiences with AI was in 1966 when I was at MIT. And I was interfacing to something we called Elijah, which was a chatbot that basically played the role of a Rogerian psychotherapist. Of course, we didn't have electronic displays, we had teletype machines, but this has been around for a long time. It might be new to a lot of people. Well, here we have some other details. We asked it. I'll just expand this. So you can see some from the child's perspective, what might be some of the issues. We see from Ava what her issues might be and what support she needs. And again, this is just looking at the dispute or the divorce from a child's perspective. And so again, you can draw all kinds of diagrams. We can say, okay, create whatever, a timeline of the divorce. Again, there's not a lot of dates in the fact pattern, so it can't come up. Again, the software is designed just to look at the documents that have been uploaded, not to look at anything else. Well, here it's looking at key events, but we don't have any dates, so you're not going to see much. So it's just made this kind of sequential thing. But you can see basically because these dates were put in primarily based on information that gleaned from from the fact pattern. And you can see it's basically drawing a timeline. If there's more timeline with more information, then you'll see it. You can also draw sequence diagrams. As I think Dan Burstein mentioned, if you have a whole list of emails, it'll show you the back and forth between the emails, including the times and dates, things like that. Again, so that you can get a quick visual of all the documents you've uploaded. Now, I added another document, which was the valuation of the business. So let's just say, okay, create a table of the key assets. So now it's going to take a look at the key assets, okay, and then just create a table of what they are. So we can also see that the biggest asset was the coffee shop. Okay, and we have a business valuation report of how they reached 750,000. So we can say, explain how the valuation of the business was 750K. So we really want to know how the company that was hired to do the valuation was basically came up with 750K. Usually they do these things a couple of ways. But again, it showed you it took 3 different approaches and eventually came up with 750,000 using a kind of discounted cash flow event. But we also know we can also ask it, and here's another thing, but it's just so I don't have to type. Assuming that the valuation is 750,000 with a profit margin 25%, what would be a structured payment for 50% of the profits? Look over 5 years, right? So now we're asking the support bot to do some basic kind of mathematics. And if you've noticed, most of the generative AI stuff is not good at a series of logical steps, right? And so what we do is we analyze the math problem, generate a small program, usually in Python, and then execute the program to come up with the answer. Because the typical large language models are not good yet at a series of logical steps. So you can ask any kind of math problem you will. Again, this is to augment the skills of the mediator. We could have said, well, what if the profit margin was 20%? So then it will just go back and take a look and say, redo the math or something. So again, this is designed to help you augment the skills of the mediator, right? So that some things people don't have the experience in or the background, can't do certain kinds of things. This again augments the skills of the mediator. Okay, so we know something about the assets.
Let's do 2 minutes, Bob.
Okay, so let's go back to overview. And what we've done here, we look at assessment results. Now, what this means is in order to divide up the assets, okay, we basically had each of the parties give their relative value out of 100 points of how they ranked each of the assets in terms of their relative importance, okay? And so what we're going to do here is use something, in this case, from game theory called the adjusted winner. And we're going to ask it to analyze the priorities that both parties have put in and then try to come up with a division of the assets that's fair. So by fair, we say, okay, each party gets the thing they valued the most, okay? And then it's fair because there's an even division, not based on the market value, but based on the relative value to each of the things. And see here where we add up the points, we see that it's not quite fair yet. Party A has less than Party B, and Party B, which was the husband, got the coffee shop. Well, marital home went to Party A. So now we can say, okay, what if we can divide some of these things up? Is there a better way of doing this? We can say, okay, these things might be divisible. Well, now we can get a fair division. Party A gets basically the marital home. Party B does get the coffee shop. We split the retirement accounts, and a savings account moved over to Party A. And you see the algorithm went ahead and transferred 8.21 points, or 41% of retirement accounts, to Party A, Party B, in order to balance the points. So the algorithm will go through the assets only based on the relative value that each party puts on each of the assets, and then tries to come up mathematically with a fair division of the assets. So that, again, that's just one of the tools that's available in the system for
This
doing
is
this kind of.
fascinating.
So this is, again, uh,
That's pretty cool.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do. So again, it's 20 minutes to kind of show quite a few different things, but questionnaire design,
Yeah.
questionnaire analysis, priorities of each of the parties, that kind of stuff. So
I love
that's,
it. Yeah. Bob, I think I've seen you give, I don't know, 2 hour or so presentations on this, and still every time you
yeah,
do another presentation, I see something new. It's just amazing how much is in this product. So I hope you all can see now why I wanted Bob to jump in and give a demo of next level mediation, because it's just a great example of the types of tools that are out there that can help you as a mediator, but also can provide that psychological reassurance for parties, right? When they're going through a really difficult thing like a divorce, um, it's hard to be reflective and to know if you're making the right decision. But if you can see something like this where the algorithm says that this is balanced, then that helps people to walk away from it and start to move to the point where they can heal and feel proud of their decisions. Um, so just wanted to say thank you, Bob. Again, I'm just so
sure.
impressed with what you've created here.
Oh, thanks. You're welcome. So
Yeah.
again, if there's any questions, people can sign up, and I will provide some free training. So
Great. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
sure.
All right. So, and again, uh, I'll be providing links to all of this, and Bob has very kindly given us a discount. So, thank you, thank you. All
Sure.
right, so let's check in with Chris and Jamie. So we have, they've gone through the pre-mediation, and now they are ready to move into actually having a meeting where they are meeting with their mediator. So, um, what the mediator is first going to do is to prep his clients and just let them know that he's going to be using a little bit of technology. And he's explaining to them, here's where I'm using technology, here's why, and uh, do you have any concerns with that? And you can see he's meeting with them individually just so they have a chance to say, I'm not really comfortable with that, or give me some more information. Um, and so initially he's saying, well, I'm just going to be using some AI tools to send out automated emails. So as you have questions, my AI tool will respond to those and give you back some information, but we can always follow up uh, with a more personal phone call or face-to-face session. And he's also going to be using an AI tool as a document minder. So I'll show you an example of that in a minute. But what that looks like is he's asking his parties for a set of documents, and he has an AI tool that will be scanning those documents as they're uploaded to make sure that he's getting the information he needs. Okay. So again, he's telling his clients ahead of time, this is what I'm going to be using during the process. Here's why. What do you think about that? Right? Because the last thing that we want to do when clients are already scared, right? For a lot of them, this is an unfamiliar process. And we want them to understand I'm going to be using these tools so that I'm not doing as much of the administrative stuff, so that I can spend more time here with you and I can save you some time and money by using these AI tools in the background. All right. And you'll have some clients that aren't okay with that, and that's fine. We know that. All right. So the meeting begins. Um, I'm sure that we all have our own acronym for how we can move through the mediation process. This is just mine. Um, so I see that the mediation begins with the mediator statement. And this might be something that you want to pre-record ahead of time and send over to the parties. And this would just be a video of you. I'll show you some examples of videos in a minute where you explain things like this is what confidentiality means, this is what binding means, this is self-determination, this is what it means to operate in good faith. So I can record that ahead of time, send it to my parties, or make it available as a resource because some of this it can be confusing, right? It can feel overwhelming for a party to sit down at the mediation table and they're trying to remember their list of 10 things to say. And then instead, you bombard them with all of this information that feels really important. So I really like the idea of sending your mediator statement to them ahead of time. And it might just be a document that you want them to review, or it might be in your agreement to mediate. And we might do that through Dropbox or something where they can sign an initial on all the key parts. And then we just review it when we're actually sitting down with them at the table or over Zoom. And so in the next phase, we have the opening statement. This is where clients share their opening. And this might be done in a private conversation. This might be done with everybody there. But this is another example where you might want to meet with them ahead of time or have them work with a chatbot so that they can practice their opening and maybe refine what their core interests are. For example, if I'm a party and if I sit down at mediation and I say, I just want to take that house because my husband is a lying bastard and I want to hurt him however possible. That might not go over so well. Randy Lowry used to say that when the party gives their opening, they have to hang the meat low enough so the dog can bite, right? He's a good old Southern boy, so those are the kind of phrases he used. But in other words, as a party is giving their opening statement, you want to make sure that you're not causing more damage. And so having them practice this a few times with you as a mediator or with an AI chatbot, that can be really helpful. But this is still where, as the mediator, you want to be really involved, right? They're expressing their feelings. You want to do all those great validating and reframing skills. And this is where I see us being really hands-on in the process. Once they feel validated, the core interests are out, and now we're starting to move into the next phase, which is negotiation. This is where we'll bring in Oladeji in a little bit. Jim is coming back, and they'll share some of their AI tools for these phases, the negotiation, drafting the agreement, and so on. Um, and I think AI can play a larger part there. I just wanted to break this down for you so you can see kind of the standard practice is at least in these first couple of phases, the statement and opening, we can still use AI to help, but there's nothing that replaces you, right? There's nothing that gives that same feeling as you're telling somebody a story that's really near and dear to your heart, and you can see in their eyes that they really get it, right? And so at least at this point, we don't want to use AI to replace that feeling unless it's like an e-commerce mediation where it's something like you're returning a blue sweater and I don't need that emotional validation. All right. So let me know if you have any questions. So, as we're starting to move into the mediation phase, um, I wanted to make sure that you all are familiar with some of the tech tools that Zoom has for you. These are apps, but because they're Zoom apps, right, their nickname is Zaps. Okay. And they're extensive. There are hundreds and hundreds of Zoom apps. So don't do it right now because then it'll kick you out of this meeting. But maybe tonight, I would recommend going into your Zoom settings and clicking on apps and just playing with some of these. There are a ton. I think some are too clunky for them to be useful in a mediation setting, but Two that I've used quite a bit is if there's a power imbalance, then I can use the Zoom app as just a timer, or it can start to mark how many words have been said, or I can get different themes. So if there's a power imbalance, then I can set this up to look like we're casually sitting at a table. Or I can set it up to feel very casual or very professional. So, in other words, there are a lot of Zoom apps. And just like as a mediator, you would set up a room if you're in person, figure out the tables and if you're doing a mediation at Jams, you have those Otis Spunkmeyer cookies. If you're at a community mediation office, you probably have your paper and your pencil sitting next to you. You can do the same kind of thing through Zoom, and you're setting the room. You can set different name tags. You can set different timers. You can set music when they come in, right? And it's just some nice cognitive reinforcement that they are in a safe place. Um, there's also a Zap that connects with something called ChatGPT Canvas. So Canvas is a ChatGPT tool. And I, again, strongly recommend that you have ChatGPT open in the background and you can type in Canvas and it will start editing for you. And you can use it to create a template for your agreement to mediate or confidentiality agreement. And I would ask ChatGPT to create this, and then I would say, analyze this with Canvas. And you can say things like, make this more professional, make sure this is relevant for a divorce mediation case. Um, Make sure that people are not using recording software and add language like that. Add in my fees, add in a consideration for jurisdiction. So Canvas is a tool in ChatGPT that is going to allow you to really edit and fine tune the results that ChatGPT gives you. So if you're not using Canvas, you can just make comments on the whole. But what I'm going to ask you to do is use Canvas because that lets you go into the individual sections and change the feeling on it. So I'm going to ask you to play with that in a little bit. Okay, then there's one more Zoom app I have to tell you about. I'm going to be honest, this one's a little freaky, and this is probably it's way more than I'm comfortable with. It's probably way more than you're comfortable with. Okay, so this is a Zoom app, and it's called MorphCast. And again, this is a free app that you can download right now and start using. And what it does is uh, it puts like a little bubble above your clients' heads. And so, like, let's say I'm working with Marla right now, right? She's one of my clients. Then, if Marla was starting to get bored, then I would get a little bubble over her head that says, Marla is disengaged, or Marla is escalating, or Marla is feeling anxiety. And it just gives me this little ongoing bubble for how my clients are feeling. This was this was brought into the mediation space years ago, um, because because of people who might not have the same kind of social skills, right? And so they needed more information. But it's scary.
Is it accurate?
I swallowed my hair.
Get some water.
All right. So,
Claire, are the speech bubbles accurate?
kind of. So, what do you think? Is it scary? Do you like it? What do you think? Is it something that you could ever see yourself using?
Is it visible to the parties as well as the mediator? No. Okay.
I could see using it because there are times that you may be thinking about one thing and not noticing that one of your clients is spiraling. You may be focusing on the other one while you lost track of the other, and the bubble pops up and kind of refocuses you on what's going on with the other party, because if one party goes out of control, you lost the session. So
Right, right. So, Jillian, you're noticing my fear here. Would you use it without telling the parties?
That's an example of an ethical issue that permeates almost all of AI, which is the issue of transparency or not. And it's a really interesting thing to ask yourself, how transparent are we before AI? I would suggest there's a measure of creativity in the room for many mediators, if you will, storytelling and the like. So it's a really interesting question. How transparent, and how transparent in advance? I mean, do you actually have to represent, how you approach it, what you're doing as a part of your disclosures up front? It's uncertain at this best, but those issues are being discussed now.
Exactly.
I will say, as a trainer and having done some large group mediations, I always would like to know who are my biggest fans, like who's really engaged, who's really excited, and who am I losing? Who's barely paying attention, because you can ask that person a question or wonder about things to bring them back into the boat. So I think there is some concept of how engaged people are
Right.
that might be really helpful, independent of an analysis of like where they're at psychologically.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just pointing out that these tools are coming, and I'm starting to see more and more mediators using them. And I just want to be intentional about it, right? I want to come up with some guidelines. And I think for me, what feels comfortable is if I'm going to be using these tools during the mediation, I want my clients to know, right? I want them to know why, and I want them to be on board with it. And if I'm not comfortable telling my clients that I'm using something like Morphcast, well, then I probably shouldn't be using it, right? Yeah, so that's roughly how I'm feeling with that one. All right, I have a couple others that I want to tell you about. Okay, so some other AI tools that I've been pretty impressed with. There's one called Lexalytics. And when what we can do here is upload our parties' positions, and it starts to give us some of the insights underneath those. So it explains their interests. So if we have a client that, let's say, really simple, if a client says that they want the house, then it starts to explain, well, they probably want the safety. If there's children, they might want stability. They might be concerned about these 5 things. And it gives you some great insights into what's going on with your clients. We'll talk in a second about, of course, we have to be careful here to not upload all of your clients' PII, right? Their personally identifiable information. But if we're just uploading their different positions, this can give us some really interesting insights into their interests. This is one that, I'll be honest, I'm okay with using during the mediation because I think it can be helpful, right? And not always. This could definitely go sideways if you don't have a good rapport with your clients or if things are really heated. But this can be helpful in the right situation for your clients to see that the other's interest is valid, right? Because how often do we go into those mediations where one party completely blows off the interests of the other party? Like, oh, they're irrational. They're exaggerating. They're upset for no reason. Oh, they have no right to feel this way. And then you have an AI tool come in and say, well, this is probably the underlying interest, and it can add a little bit of validity and help to balance out some of those power interests. Um, Another one that I really like is called Meltwater, and and this this is something that I have seen people use. So you have to add transcripts. I'm sorry, you have to add captions, right? So there's the transcription in a Zoom, and then it will read through that and help to explain some of the client sentiment. So what they meant here was, or the reason why they got so upset here is And this can be kind of like a co-mediator. This is something that I have seen be very helpful. And the goal here is that they're trying to help the other person to understand why they said something in a certain way, why it was so escalated for them. Okay. So those are a couple that I've really been impressed with. A common concern that I'm hearing, especially from attorneys, is if we are giving clients access to this much information, especially before the mediation even starts, are we worried about UPL, right? Are we worried about the unauthorized practice of law? And after attending, I would say probably 3 dozen meetings on this over the last year, I can authoritatively say the answer is we don't know. We do not know at this point. This is definitely a gray area. So I'm hearing that what most people are saying is that we are comfortable giving our clients access to some kind of a chatbot information solution explorer that says, you could do this instead of you should do this, right? And it seems like that's where we get into trouble. So if you're playing around with a chatbot, trying to decide what you want to add to your website, just look at the responses it's telling your clients. And if it's telling them, oh, you definitely should settle for $1 million. Well, then we're kind of getting into UPL and we're probably not really helping our clients at all. They're setting on a position that might not be the right position. Even if it is the right position, they're getting that number before they're psychologically ready. So that's not helpful. Instead, we want a chatbot, or you want to guide your chatbot to give responses that sounds like you could try one of these 3 options. You might want to consider one of these 3 choices. And then we're just giving them information instead of telling our clients what to do, right? Because the whole goal here is to empower them to reach a decision instead of them feeling like they have to do what the robot told them to do. So again, I have been sitting in so many of these meetings. I've been meeting with International Bar Association, American Arbitration Association, JAMS, UNCITRAL, iCoder, and they're all trying to figure out what are the rules? Like, where is it okay for us to add AI and where is it not? And this is my very formal, very fancy, technically accurate understanding of what they're saying. It's kind of like a dog bone. In other words, at the beginning of the process, all of the major decision makers are saying, yeah, we're pretty okay with adding AI at the beginning of the process. Things like we've been talking about, right? All the pre-mediation, the intake scheduling, documents, calendaring, all of that. At the end of the process, we're pretty okay. We can understand how AI could be helpful at the end of the process. Um, Document analysis or invoicing, ongoing mediation, all of those things that we'll talk about tomorrow. At the middle, though, we want to be really cautious about adding tech. So that's why it's kind of skinny still in the middle. We need to have a justifiable reason and we need to have parties consent beforehand. Okay. Before we're starting to use AI in the actual meeting itself. Why are you doing it? Is it just because it's fun and it's trendy? Or is there a justifiable reason here? Is there some way where you can see this adding benefit to the point where both parties can agree to it? Okay, I want to pause there, and then we'll move on to Layla to talk with us a little bit more about meeting notes. But let me pause there. I would love to hear some of your thoughts on this. So, as we're talking about adding AI to the process, do you think that that's the right way to look at it? That it's okay to add it at the beginning, it's okay to add it at the end, but we want to avoid it in the middle? Is that concept making sense for you? What do you think? Or do we want to be careful about it the whole way across? Or should we tell clients before we add it, whether it's at the beginning or the end?
Claire, I think your dog bone is perfect.
Yes.
I really do.
Okay,
Because
5 stars, Bob. Good job.
it's using everything in the beginning, which is just getting you set up.
Hmm.
At the end, it's using AI to help you improve and move faster. And in between is the personal.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, when we had to go to, because of pandemic, start working with Zoom, what was the biggest complaint? I don't get to talk to the clients in person.
Hmm.
Don't have that to put my hand over, for empathy or something.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big piece. We've gotten past it, but we've had to learn new things. We've had to learn to read facial features now rather than
Yeah.
body language.
Yeah.
So I
Exactly.
think, but I do believe in using AI in the middle for options for myself. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm stuck, I put it into AI and it becomes my sounding board. It comes back to me and says, here's some options to think about. Some of them I might have already thought, some I might not have. And it gives me that person to go back and talk to
I love
say,
it.
help me understand this.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this?
And the price is right.
Yeah.
And it's always available.
Yeah.
You know, it's really having like an in-house consultant. And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I know in the seminars that I've attended relating to using AI in the practice of law, they say, think of it as an associate, an assistant, who
correct.
you send out to do research for you, and they prepare the document, but you review it. You
Yep.
know, you become the filter, you screen it before you send it out. And
Right.
I think thinking of AI as that way, as your assistant, your associate, something that you will screen and review before you use it or send it out or utilize in any way. I think that's a good way to think of it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think that's good. Thank you.
Uh,
Yeah,
Claire,
Lori.
I agree with Bob's analysis, and I think people who are going to the mediator, they already have some issues, some problems, right? And if we give them the AI in advance, they get confused. They say, "Well, we're coming to you for some resolution. Why are you sending us to these websites?" And I think we should use them as a tool to enhance our practices.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see any issue letting the clients know that from time to time I may use the AI to get some assistance. Just want you to know. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, you're telling them ahead of time, right? The last thing we want is for this to feel like a surprise because then they're going to start to wonder, well, what else have they been hiding from me, right? And then we've lost all that trust and rapport. Exactly.
The, I'll be talking about this more, but for purposes of homework assignments, it's wonderful. And the reality is, people really don't move far in the moment in real time. If they're going to move, it's because they're going to think about some things, maybe get a bit more information, sleep on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then make a little bit of a new and different decision. So I find for homework assignments, some measure of which might be mutual, but I've always given respective strategic homework assignments when I would do my email or correspondence, there would be some common questions for them to think about, but respective questions
Yeah.
as well. And a very interesting question, again, ethically, any problem with giving them different queries that they might want to submit to AI?
Yeah.
I think it's a part of our creative, discretionary, professional work, doing everything we can to move them. And when I talk, I'll say, we're not really just there, I think, to help them reach agreement.
Right.
I think we're also there to help them be as capable as possible and to, in fact, work together as well as possible, both today and downstream, if possible. So
Right.
I think the typical divorce mediator, and this where it comes down to defining your own practice. What are your purposes and goals? Is it simply to get the agreement, or is to help them also be capable and be able to work together to launch a better future? So I'll be emphasizing this, but I think there's a risk that we focus too much on the agreement and the terms of the agreement and the
That's true.
word, okay? Because that's what AI does really well, are words, okay? But to get there, we still need the human touch. And I think a big part of that is empowerment. They don't come to us at their best. I think it's appropriate that we help them be as good as they can be. And so we'll talk a bit more about that. AI can help in these regards as well.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Um, I want to shift gears now and ask Layla to speak. And so Layla's going to be talking with us about in the meeting, if we do decide to incorporate some AI tools, what are some things that can help us with meeting notes, meeting reflections, some of those pieces? With that being said, Layla, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's great to see you, Claire. Well, first, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Again, thank you, Jim Alamed and Claire, for inviting me to speak about my favorite subject, AI. I'm truly honored to be here. And I'm sure you heard probably a lot about some of these AI tools, but I definitely want to highlight how much AI tools has significantly improved my productivity as a mediator. I mean, I don't think these tools are helpful. I think they transform the way we work. And I feel like we have the opportunity to reach a whole new level. It's how you use it. And, I have been able to fly with it. I started doing 40-hour training because I never thought I would have the time. But because of AI, I was able to do it, to mediate more, to take on more projects. So I'm not going to be able to share all of them. There's so much out there, but I'm going to go ahead and show just few of the AIs that I think it can be helpful to mediators. But think of AI as having like 20 assistants and none of them ever call in sick. I mean, that's how I view pretty much AI for me. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And I have the ability to do that, right? Claire? Thank you. Can everybody see the screen?
You're good.
So, well, here is our future. So enhancing mediation with AI. I just kind of want to just talk about some of the things that I'm sure you already heard about a lot of these today, but I just want to kind of go over what it does and I'm going to go ahead and share with you different AI tools, but AIs can rapidly analysis of large volumes of data, which means you don't need to go, if you have a lot of data to go through, you don't have to sit manually and try to find like important information. It will do it for you, basically. Number two, identification of key information and patterns. AI can really find important details and patterns in that data, which can help you understand the situation and problem a lot faster. And really, if you're in need of time to make decisions really quickly, this is a great tools to use, the AI. Summarization of lengthy documents. AI can take very long documents and make them shorter and just really keeping the important information so you don't need to have to sit and read the whole thing. Detection of basically contradictions. AI can find any points, any disagreement or contradictions in the data. Like if you have two sections and they're presenting opposing information, it would also do that. And, this is really important, for us if we want to make sure that the contents are clear and also accurate. Number 5 is real-time transcription of meetings. We all know that AI can quickly convert everything that we speak during the meetings. I'm not talking about mediation, but it could be any meetings that we have. And it can take the written text and it can take the written text right then and there, and you will have the notes, so you can have, if you want to, read them later, what the meeting was about. So that would be a great way to handle that. Automated appointment scheduling. AI can manage your calendar. It can automatically set up meetings for best time is for everyone. It can keep your schedule organized. And I go through which AI can do that for you. So it's a great way to track your appointments and, commitment without having to manually do them. Facilitation of multi-language. I love this. Sometimes you have parties speaking different language, and it's great that you can have the AI that can instantly translate what people are saying right then and there in the other person's language. So it's a great tool. I definitely love this because before I had to always look for someone who's a translator. So this has been really helpful. Quick drafting of agreement. AI can help. My favorite parts. It can take the key points on what the parties agree to. I never include the parties' personal information, and Claire talked about this in detail because you want to make sure the names and their privacy is protected. Their their account numbers and their birthdays and whatever privacy it is. We want to make sure that's not included in AI. But you can prompt your AI with the notes that they have on their agreement, and then you have it draft that settlement agreement for you. And that can really cut your time in half. But you want to make sure that you definitely review and the final draft to make sure that nothing is missed. But it really does help me a lot. Conflict analysis. AI can help analyzing the information you gather during sessions. So, for example, to clients having a huge conflict, you can put it in chat AI and it can give you underlying issues and it can give you solution. It's crazy that I've heard from people who actually my niece works for DCFS, Department of Children Care Services, and she talks about how a lot of kids use AI as therapy and it really has helped them. So it can really create this amazing perspective in giving you just a different lens of looking at things. But it's great for mediators because you can get different settlement proposal ideas. It can give you the pros and cons of each proposal and come up with, practical option for each. So basically it can help you and it can also help the client to get a clear picture of what is on the table and what is their best options that they can be well informed about. Assistant in understanding potential outcomes. So AI can look similar past cases and legal data and give you an idea what could happen if a certain proposal is chosen. So, for example, if one parent wants a full custody, and that AI might show what courts usually decide in that similar situation. So it's a great way for us to be informed, but also help client to make more well-informed decision because they see the possible results, good or bad, of each options. And one of my favorite is training and development. Just creating a PowerPoint presentation here for today. A lot of this was with the help of AI giving me, ideas about colors or about, how I want the slides to look like, what pictures to put into the slides. It's really helps generate great ideas for if you're doing any kind of training as well. So here are all the wonderful AI tools that we can use. These are their logos, but I'm going to go into them more. But I thought it was kind of cool to put in the logos here. Claire, I can see you're appreciating this. I'm a little bit a tech nerd. I just love technology. So AI language models. I'm sure you heard a lot about ChatGPT. I'm going to just put it out there. When ChatGPT came out the first time, I literally cried because this is something I had imagined and wanted, and I couldn't believe that such a thing is even possible. I really cried. Just like imagine, because I grew up in different countries, and English was like, my, I don't know, fourth, fifth language, and just to be able to have AI just be something that I imagine, oh, if I wish I could have something that would do this and this, and then it came true. It didn't feel real. And so I always joke around that it's like my it's I don't know. I get emotional talking about it because it really changed my life, my career in such a high level. So enough getting emotional about that. So ChatGPT, there's two of them. There's Cloud and there's ChatGPT. And I have colleagues who have used Cloud. I'm more open to using ChatGPT than Cloud. But here is kind of goes what does ChatGPT even stands for? It's generative pre-trained transformer. And it was created to benefit all humanity. I think that's a perfect way of explaining it because it really does. And it's known for its advancements in deep learning. And Cloud is more for quick to the point, making communication during meetings easier and clearer. So I had a friend that would put her own thoughts into Cloud, and then it would give out a lot more clear and simple way of communicating what she wanted to say. So that's also another great tools for mediator to use. But because my obsession is with ChatGPT and how I use it, I'm going to talk more about that. And I put down here all the possibilities, and this is the logo for ChatGPT, as I'm sure everyone is already aware of this. The ChatGPT tools for effective communication, effective mediation, it generates possible negotiation scenarios, a strategy tailored to clients' needs. So we can prepare for our clients by asking ChatGPT to explain any complex divorce scenario that you're dealing with. And it will give you so many great negotiation strategies. And by the way, I use the ChatGPT, the paid version, and I feel it's a lot more effective than the free version. And so it's great in helping you to help you guide your clients when there is high conflict situation. It offers language suggestions for handling sensitive and challenging discussion. So we know that language is everything in mediation. So we can use language to de-escalate conflict and foster a more constructive dialogue. For example, we've heard using the word visitation or custody. I like more a softer language, and I think a lot of mediators agree to this as well, like using parenting time as opposed to custody or visitation or parenting responsibility. I think addressing sensitive discussions carefully, we can really help them communicate in a more productive. Another great way is asking questions, right? Asking reflective question. And this is Michael Lang's specialty. And he's incredible. If you are highly recommend taking his training on that. But reflective questions are very helpful, and it can really bring awareness to for the parties to think about the bigger picture. And some of the examples I'm going to go over later with, but if you ask it for reflective questions, it will spew so many different ways that is tailored towards the mediation that you're dealing with.
And Layla, we only have a few minutes left.
Oh,
Would
oh,
you,
we do?
I know.
Okay, so let me go to them more than really quickly then.
Yeah, and I want to make sure you tell people about Blue Jay, and there's a couple of others in there that are
Okay. So I
that are
think everyone knows about ChatGPT, what it can be used
Mhm.
for. So I'm going to go to number 7, Disco, and have anybody heard about Disco and CaseMark? So AI tools like Disco and CaseMark can go through they can really go through thousands of documents really quickly. And it summarizes like things like depositions and any documents. It just quickly summarizes and saves you time and simplifies that you can share those information between the parties. That's for Disco and CaseMark. So let me go to the next one because I know we are short on time. Clara and XAI, they can schedule appointments for you and keep your calendar organized. That's great. These are great tools. Author, AI, and Sonics, they can transcribe your audio and everything that is said in meeting as they happen. I know that we are short in time, so I'm sorry I'm going really quickly. I can get into details about them, but please feel free to ask me any questions. You can contact me after. So predictive analytics and multi-language support. Have anyone heard of Lex Machina? It has a database of over, I mean, when I was doing this pitch, I don't know, it was about a year ago, it was like 8,000. Now it's about 4 million cases. And it gets updated quickly. And it has access to dockets, document information that's associated with those cases. And it actually gets updated daily. And you can see about past, damages that were awarded in details or cases, how they were handled. And it's really great for understanding and predicting outcome based on past cases. And it also utilizes historical data to predict legal outcomes. BlueJ is another one. It's primarily known for AI tools in tax law and employment. Language translation,
I
DeepL and Google Translate. Yes.
I just have to add I love Blue Jay. This is one of the ones that I am very comfortable using in the middle of a mediation because it's like having a tax attorney or an employment attorney sitting right there in the meeting with you. It's so helpful, well versed, and it explains things clearly. Um, as mediators, we don't want to be offering legal advice, but if you know that parties are going down the wrong path, or if they're hung up on a specific point and you're like, oh, we're gonna have to reschedule, Blue Jay can be your answer in those sticky moments. So thank you, Layla, for really
Yes,
bringing this one up. I love this one.
sure. And then, of course, Google Translate and DeepL, that they just can translate language in real time. So you can, people right then and there, they can help understand each other and what's being said during the meetings. And I know that I went through this really fast, but please feel free to reach out to me. You can contact me. I'm happy to share my slides. Or any information that's questions or I'm happy to answer. Okay, did I do that under 15 minutes?
Marvelous. You did great. You did great. Thank you.
My
All right.
pleasure.
Oh, thank you, Layla. So I'm just going to share a couple of tools that I like for Caucus, and then in about 5 minutes, we're going to take a break. All right. So hopefully your brains can hold on for another 5 minutes. All right. So you're having your mediation, everything is going splendidly, and then it is time for you to meet separately with the parties. So I'm going to tell you about a couple of tools. First, obviously, you want to practice it and be really comfortable with this before using it with clients. And that's true with any note taker. But I think it's especially true when we're talking about Caucus because Now suddenly we're very concerned with confidentiality, right? What is actually being displayed to the other person? Um, so a key thing to think about here is if it's going to send a summary, how is that summary going to be sent? So for instance, read.ai. I really like this one. This, especially if I know I'm going to be late to a meeting, then this joins the meeting before me and it gives me a little summary when I get there. But in read.ai, you have to go into the settings because you can set this to send a summary of the entire meeting to everyone or just to you. Okay, if I know that we're going to stay in joint session and if everybody's comfortable with that, then that would be great, right? It can send a summary to me and to Jim and to Layla, and we all were on literally the same page. But if I'm going to go and have a private conversation with Jim and then read.ai sends us a summary of the entire meeting, now I'm in pretty big trouble, right? Now I've kind of broken like the inviolate mediator rule because it just shared that confidential information that was shared in Caucus to everyone. So, read.ai is one that I really like. Just make sure that you go into settings because it can send that summary to everyone. Otter.ai, that's another one that people are probably familiar with. This one does a fantastic job at summarizing. It can break things down nicely into headings, which can be really helpful for your own notes because then you can start to see what are the key issues here and their interests underneath each one. Because then my brain doesn't have to be preparing that outline in the middle of the mediation, right? I can just be present and be doing all of those good rapport building, validating skills like, interesting, how frustrating, right? Instead of my brain trying to take notes and categorize everything. Zoom note taker, it just works really well, right? Earlier when I got kicked out of the meeting, as soon as I came back, it popped up with a little window that said, hey, we noticed you missed a few things. Do you want to see what you missed? And Zoom is just knocking it out of the park lately. So here are some suggestions for note takers because I think that that can be really helpful during a meeting. Just as we're using note takers during the caucus session, we just want to be a little aware, right? Like I said, make sure that you practice it so you know, is it going to send a summary of everything to everyone? Or can I make sure I'm just getting a specific piece? If I go and meet with a party in one room, let's make sure that it's not including that private conversation in the generic notes. So I still think they're great. I just think that we need to practice them a little bit first. Okay. And look at that. 1 minute early, and then we will take a break and start to move into option generation. So I'm going to hang out here if people have questions, because I know we went through that last section pretty quickly. Let me recommend, we'll be starting at, I want to say right on the hour. Is that correct? Let me double check that. With Jim. Yeah. So we'll be starting right at the hour with Jim talking about reticent parties. Then we'll move into negotiation. So please take 15 minutes, get up, move around a little bit, maybe even try practicing some of these prompts in ChatGPT, and then let's connect it to and see how that went. All right. Thanks, everyone. Go move, get up, leave your computer.
While you're conducting a session, where is the ethical issue with that? Because it's ChatGPT particularly?
Yeah. So, I kind of think about the silver line above my laptop. And I just think about where the home base is, where it's storing information for these different AI tools. ChatGPT's home base is above the silver line, right? That means that it's cloud-based, that it's possible for other people to access that information. There are some other AI tools that I really like that do very similar things. If it's a dedicated chatbot based off of a finite set of information, something like the mediate.com chatbot, then I can trust more where that information is going to be stored. Another great example is Spellbound. I can give you that link. And that's a tool that I download, and it's an add-on to Microsoft Word. So the home base is now in my computer, which means I'm comfortable then putting all my clients' stuff, oh, Susie and John are getting a divorce for this much money. They have these kids. This is their home address. I'm comfortable putting that information in if I know it's all going to be stored on my computer. ChatGPT, we don't have that confidence. So that's why it's great for things like templates, being really generic about understanding positions. Give me 5 options for people who have been through a similar situation, but I can't put in ChatGPT something like, well, Susie and John are getting a divorce, and this is their home address, and this is their social security number, because then I could potentially be exposing that PII to, to the cloud where it could be searchable. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I actually didn't even know that this thing, that information you put in as a question is actually searchable and could come up in somebody else's search.
That's
It's not supposed to be, but it can be. Yeah.
that there's been some ongoing discussion in the chat, but also more generally also. And if you're just using the general chat GPT, you really want to do everything you can to delete personal identifying information from the documents that you submit. And that's far preferable to like blacking it out where your text actually remains and the system could see that text. All right. So that's one thing. But I think the answer is a private GPT, where you pay the extra, you pay the $20 a month. You're able to build your own system, and you can set the rules for what it looks at and what it doesn't. Theoretically, you could set up rules where it would actually automatically delete personal identifying information, but I haven't been there yet. I haven't tried it, tested it, made sure. So, but the best answer I could give is a private GPT at this time, where and you could just start out with a core of information and do tests as to whether the general system picks it up or not. So,
Yeah, I would say, yeah, to be a little careful. But
yeah.
I know our relationship with the different like OpenAI and Microsoft and stuff, we've gone out of our way to have agreements with them that none of it can be shared. So, but yeah, humans just trade the convenience for privacy all the time. So it's up for grabs. But in general, you don't just use the general chat GPT or GPTs without having a special relationship with them for for sharing or training the models for other stuff. That's all.
I think there will be ethical rules and guidelines that will soon be coming out on this. They're in
April
discussion.
15th.
They're
That's our goal. Yep. So I'm responding to Terry's question. She says it sounds too labor intensive to take all the names out of several documents. Absolutely, Terry, right? Because this is supposed to save us time. And the last thing that we want to do is use this tool that's going to take 5 times as much time. So I'm writing a response in here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
so
understand the difference between, I guess, once you pay, do you have privacy? Once you,
well,
no,
so it kind
or
of
your
depends.
clients, your documents.
Right. It kind of depends on what you're using it for. And Spellbook, I might have said Spellbound earlier, I can't remember, but Spellbook is the this is the add-on. So it's a Microsoft Word add-on, and this is where you're bringing it down to your computer, so you don't have to worry about redacting anything or protecting their personal information, because this will stay in your computer so you know that everything's safe.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of tool that we're looking for. If this is something where I'm going to use it for specific case analysis, right? Where I want to be able to plug in Chris and Jamie Foster are getting a divorce. What should we do? Then that needs to be a tool where I can trust where it's being stored. So like Robert Bergman's program, next level mediation, something where this is downloaded, or I know that it's keeping this information in my little slice. And we don't have that same confidence with something like Chat GPT. So
Right. Okay.
yeah.
But this spell, whatever I just put on my other computer here.
Spellbook.legal. I'm going to be honest, the price on this one has gone up quite a bit. So let me
Okay.
research it a little bit and see if I can find another version that I like. I want to say it's at like $350 a year right now. And but it's really cool. It's definitely worth doing the free demo for a month just to see what's possible.
Right.
But I tried the free demo and I ran quite a few of my mediation agreements through it. And it just added all of this stuff to my mediation agreement that I hadn't thought of. And it gave the summary, not quite as detailed as Bob's, but it said like, gosh, it looks like right now you're giving client A 67% and you're only giving client B 33%. Like why is there a difference here? Or it looks like you're filing in this state. Have you considered this jurisdiction? Or it seems like you're lacking on the confidentiality section. And it was really, really useful. So let me see if I can
can
find a
see
better
that.
option.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mhm.
I would add, you can use software like guardrail.tech. Will highlight any confidential information in your documents if you want.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
I'll put
that's a
that
good
in the
one.
chat box. Yeah.
Great. Great, great. Um, yeah, so you can tell this is why we want to be really cautious about actually using tech in the middle of a mediation because you want to make sure that you're not exposing your client's information. Let me pause there and just say, this is why I think this needs to be an ongoing conversation because stuff does change pretty frequently. And like Bob just mentioned, guardrail.tech, I hadn't heard of that. But this is great to know about, and it's probably something that I'll incorporate into my practice. As I said earlier, it is impossible for all of us to be experts on every single thing out there, right? There's 50 new AI programs being released daily. We can't do it. Let's not try. Instead, I think this needs to be an ongoing conversation where we continue to reach out to the mediation community and say, I want something that will analyze my mediation agreement, but I need to make sure I'm not exposing my client's data. What do you all recommend? And as we hear recommendations, we're going to continue to put those on that link, the AI tech tools that I sent to you. I'll send it again. I know I've probably sent you 300 links at this point. But that's where I'm just putting a list of all of the AI resources that we recommend so you don't have to waste hours and hours going and trying to find something, but just use the stuff that we all know. Okay, we've tried this and it's safe. It's something that I can vouch for. So I know there's a lot here. None of us are going to be the experts. So let's just, let's give up that dream right now. And instead, let's just say, all right, I'm comfortable having this be an ongoing organic conversation where we all lean on each other. Yeah, does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, thank you. It's great that you're collecting all these resources and
Well, we needed to, right? I was starting to lose track of them. So last summer, Colin Rule and I hired 4 interns to go through all of these recommendations that we'd been hearing about. And we said, we want you to try to break it. Try to see if you can expose client data in there, see if you can, do everything that you can to see if this is strong, if it's protecting data, if there's a transparent understanding about how it arrived at that. And then these interns gave us back a list of everything that they recommended. And so that's what started to compile this list. Yeah, it was good. And we just have to keep adding to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you very much for this part of the discussion. And my fear about using things is not only the PII, but as a lawyer, and if my client is recognizable by someone out there or themselves,
Mhm.
that's a big concern. So this is really,
Absolutely.
really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we saw a couple hours ago we're starting to see more often, especially in GPTs like DeepSeek. That's the one that came out in China right a month or so ago. Um, that they're being very transparent about how they're arriving at a conclusion. And so we can see exactly where the data is coming from and make sure that it's not coming from um, I don't know, coming from a source that isn't trustworthy, right? That it's not hallucinating, but we can understand, all right, I want to present 3 solutions to my clients. How did you arrive at those 3 solutions? Like, give me the links to them. Let me see the understanding behind it. Yeah, it's it's interesting because it's right now it's blowing Chat GPT out of the water. It's moving much faster. It has quite a few more tools. And so far, we'll see if we can trust the data. So far, it seems like it has a much smaller carbon footprint than ChatGPT does. Because if you've been following any of this, yeah, Dolores, you're nodding your head. One of the big concerns is that right now, if you were to run a query on Google and run the same query on ChatGPT, that it takes about 5 times more energy to run the query on ChatGPT. So right now it's cool, but it's kind of like the big, I I don't know, it's kind of like the big clunky Ford, that used to have 12 miles per gallon, right? And now things have improved and they've gotten quite a bit better and we're better for the environment. Well, we're kind of in the original iteration of this, which is kind of big and clunky and it's not doing great things for the environment yet. We know that we're getting better, and DeepSeek is a really good example of that.
Yeah, well, just go ask it about Tenement Square, see what you get for an answer.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Um, Great idea, Lisa. Okay, Jim, I'm eating into your time. I apologize. So with that, let me hand this over to Jim. I don't know if I need to introduce you again. This is Jim. I don't know. We've traveled the world.
So, some of you will probably remember John Haynes, very famous mediator, very talented and thoughtful guy. And he said there were three most important things for the mediator to be effective: rapport, rapport, rapport. Okay. And rapport, of course, is having an effective, working, responsive relationship with people where they're comfortable and it's effective. And I mention this now because it's almost like we forgot the old days. We do this in person, and cookies and coffee and waiting rooms and things like that. But now it's all online. I mean, I as a trainer, I so much wish I would have come up with a role play. Folks, imagine that the world can no longer physically get together. How would you now do divorce mediation? Because that's exactly what not only our society, but the world was kind of put through. And Colin and I talk about it a lot, about how much did this expedite the move online? And our conclusion is probably 2 to 3 decades. You just had this mass training experience for professionals as well as the marketplace, so they could stay in touch with their own families, et cetera. So it's really mind-boggling when you think about like developing rapport and how do we best do that online. And when the pandemic first hit and people were not so familiar with Zoom, nor was I, what I ended up defaulting to was to setting up, I used to call it an AV, an audio visual checkout meeting, where I would say, let's go ahead before we all get together, just to make sure that we have the connection, the technical connections, and it works, and you're there, and et cetera. And I found that this was a tremendous asset online to just have this little private time with each party, to, of course, answer any technical issues, but also to open it up just a little bit, any critical things you'd want me to know about before we would get together. And when we're developing rapport, it's both individual and joint. You kind of need both of them, if you will. And this ability to kind of short circuit my old system where we started off coming back from the waiting room together, into the meeting room, and to be willing to be a little flexible and have respective meetings, just it proved to be miraculous for me, so much that I now do it as generally, because I just find it's an easier ramp into their situation, develop a deeper, effective trust with them. And then, we get together. I need to prove myself all again, in their joint presence. But it's easier having had some even perhaps more truthful discussions with them, respectively. I also think the whole issue of how much caucus, how much joint, it's fascinating. I don't know what the answers are here, but the nimbleness of being able to schedule is fascinating. Just, it used to be 2-hour meetings, every 2 weeks, and kind of set in stone in a brick and mortar office and blah, blah, blah. But my rule now is, we meet either individually or jointly so long as we're making progress. Okay. And when we're not, then usually I'll say, let's push pause. I have some ideas I want to run by you as well as all right. And this brings up, I think, the absolute criticality of homework. Okay. And homework, you don't even have to know what the homework assignment is during your session. You just, I've got 2 or 3 things I want to run by you just to get your thoughts here. It may loosen things up a bit. And you come up with your brilliant ideas. So in the old world, every 2 weeks, 2-hour meetings, I would do a piece of correspondence between each meeting, which would summarize seeming progress made, typically attaching the evolving draft. I would have homework, and some measure would typically be joint, but there might be respective homework that they would get not through the written correspondence, but by email, for example. And then my third piece was, what do I anticipate the next 2 or 3 discussions will be? So, what's the seeming progress? Here's what I'd like you to do. And this is where I think we'll push off next. All right. And that was really helpful. They would come in and Jamie, I would have my flip chart, and it would have, the little agenda that had been represented in the correspondence, and things were lined up. And I'm only mentioning this because I don't think structure comes so easily online. And that it may be really worth asking yourself, what can you do to help remind folks, where are we kind of in this process? I used to love having my little triptych flip chart page up in the corner of the office, and at any point I could kind of say where we are. I haven't found an effective flip chart piece of technology yet. So anyhow, those are just the little introductory comments. Any quick questions before I show a few slides? All right. Michael, please feel free to interrupt as I would lead people astray. All right, I'm going to try to share, see if that works.
Jim, what's your experience with the whiteboard and Zoom?
I don't use it. I find a lot of these new innovative technologies actually get in the way. I mean, if I felt comfortable and effective and I thought it was helpful, now I would rather use a Jamie Fosgate flip chart next to me where I write the stuff rather than battle with the technology. Now, if I use the technology enough, I'd probably get comfortable with it and not embarrass myself. But I don't like to perform with technology in front of the clients. For example, I won't do live chat GPT inquiries. I'll do mine asynchronously, and I'll encourage them to do the same, which is cool because it's also free for them. Okay, so a few main points I'd like to make, and I need to go to the slideshow. All right, so why is AI different than previous communicational technologies? Email, attachments, websites, scheduling, paying. The reason it's different is it can deal with any issue, including all the substantive issues that are being discussed, and including, how we might best mediate. It'll answer any question. We haven't, everything else has been doing it faster, not having to print it, not having to mail it, etc. This is different. This is a new world. And, it's interesting. It's not also seemingly all-knowing, but it kind of has taken on a little bit of an authoritative tone. I mean, if you can have a great question and you got an answer from ChatGPT, that's an effective piece to have in your pocket when you're negotiating. All right, so because it goes to the substantive issues. Now, just like with every other issue, we need to meet the folks where they're at. It probably is going to become an ever more reasonable answer to ask whether they've run any of their issues through an AI platform. I don't do it systematically, but perhaps I will soon. From my perspective, as I'm mediating, I'm always thinking, what would be the most constructive inquiries I could do, or we could do, of the AI engine? Okay, because again, the coolest thing about AI is it's all dependent on the questions or prompts that are asked. Right? AI is affordable, hardworking, never complains. Your new best friend or friends. and it's amazing. I agree with Layla. I mean, it's literally an emotional issue to have such, it's kind of like not only somebody telling you to go, search on this at Google, but then it looks at all the results, synthesizes them, and presents it to you in a user-friendly way in like 15 seconds. It's just incredible. One thing that you want to avoid as a mediator working with AI engines is asking for single answers. Okay? Ask for possibilities, options, ways that might work, solutions, possible solutions, etc. Always in the plural, because if you ever ask for the single answer, which I note is really what robot arbitration is, where it's making the decision, that's a much more controversial issue. Then you really get into like, what's the transparent data set? It's deciding. But in the world of mediation, the folks are the decision makers. They're all empowered. We're just trying to use our own knowledge and abilities as well as AI to assist them to most capably consider the issues. All right, no limit, but your imagination. Now, as I mentioned previously, I don't think when we mediate, we're just there to get an agreement. I think many of us have developed flavors or styles of mediation where we have other agendas, other things that we're trying to satisfy. This is just my formula. I'm not saying it needs to be yours, but I believe people do not come to us at their best. In fact, I would say more accurately, they often come at their performative worst. And I want to work with them to understand them, what makes them tick, what are they really looking for, to assist them to be at their individual best. Is that going to happen in the first moments of our discussion? No, it's going to take some time, if you will, this respective empowerment. And as I said, it's family. Most of them have kids. They have a future together. So the question is, can I do anything to assist them to capably work together? And then finally, I'm going to hear from them about what they would like to create. What are the interests that they would like to satisfy? From my perspective, there's a positive intention behind all behavior. Life is plenty hard. We don't go around looking to make it harder. Everybody's always looking to make it better, no matter that sometimes comes out a bit ugly in the first moments, all right? So want to help them be at their best, want to help them work together, want to help them get best satisfaction. Just posted this article at mediate.com. How can ChatGPT be helpful in divorce mediation? It's worth the read. It literally gives you the prompts that you could submit, okay? So there's an article there. We don't need to go through it here. Here's what I want to show, though. I think most of us who have mediated, we come up with a strategic map for how we work. And I'm not suggesting you adopt mine. I'll bet you have your own. It's probably even better. But my experience is that mediators work successively, somewhat overlapping, but mostly successively in three ways. One is a problem-solving way, interest-based option development. We elicit all of this valuable information, help them to reach any and all easy agreements based on their interests and perceived options, right? That's the first column under interest-based problem solving. We're doing other things in this initial part of a mediation. We're building rapport. We're gaining the information. We're really trying to understand those interests and possibilities. We're harvesting any easy agreements. If there's any easy exchanges, exchanges are golden in mediation because they have embedded rationale. It's a give and get. All right, we can change those. So those are super cool. Plus, they demonstrate the people's ability to work together. Now, at some point, that easy problem solving slows, and I think the mediator becomes more proactive. But not in terms of decision or heat too early, but much more wondering, being curious. I call it hypothesis generation and testing. User-friendly name is mediator guessing and wonderment, perhaps. And so basically, based on their desired outcomes and interests and their principles, we're going to wonder whether some things might work, and I'll give you good language on that. Finally, we'll get down to the 10-yard line, but we're not quite there. We may need to turn up the heat. Heat could either be mutual, things that bear upon both of them, like cost and stress and impact on the kids. And of course, people also have their individual vulnerabilities and weaknesses. But the last thing you want to do as a mediator is to offer doubt and dissonance or heat without rapport firmly in place. Heat with rapport in place is a concerned friend wanting to be sure that you make fully thoughtful decisions. Heat without rapport is an attack by an agent of the enemy. Okay, so let's keep moving. Now, I already taught this is the atmosphere when they come in. How can we best do what you want to do, satisfy your desires? What's the best way for us to do that? I have kind of a sequence of question types in the problem-solving frame, starting out knowing nothing, what's going on, the information gathering, who, what, where, when, why, the clarifying, specifying if there's any uncertainty, the justifying, the why. Okay. The hypothetical might be imagine something, then, what leading, is what I'm hearing you'd be prepared to. So I'm suggesting the answer. Stimulating what other ways? Participation, we haven't heard from you, Robert, recently. Focusing questions. If we were to try to decide now on something that would work, what do you think that would be? Alternate choice as between this and that, the eye doctor question as between this and that, what would be your preference? And closure, folks, we got to figure this out, what's going to work, right? That would be like a problem-solving set of questions. But I want to highlight certain frames among them that I think are most important. The outcome frame is, what do you want? What are you looking for? How would you like it to be? Okay. And the evidence question is, how would you know you had it? Right? I want to be involved with the kids. How would you know you were involved with the kids? I don't want to be a bag lady. How would you know you weren't a bag lady, that you can pay your bills? Okay. So what do you want? How would you know you have it? One easy step is accumulating outcomes. So we're not only here for you, Mary, your desires, A, B, and C, Bill, yours, D, E, and F as well. Yes? To do as best as we can, getting you those out. Yeah. All right. Conditional close. And in fact, we'll have agreement when we get each of you as much of those things that you want as we possibly can, and you're prepared to support the way in which we make those decisions. Yes? All right. That's their first subconscious awareness. They're not going to get everything. Now, I'm going to scoot at this point all the way to my most interventionist technique, which is going to be consistent with the hypothesis mediator guessing model. The reference point process is my elegant substitute for the temptation to make a recommendation, right? And there are times where the folks will turn to you and say, what do you think we should do? My response is, I'm not going to tell you what I think you should do. I haven't thought about it in that way. If you'd like to ask me, what do I think are the set of arrangements that the two of you might be most likely able to both agree to, I would be prepared to describe that. And if I do that, then I'm going to request that you would do one thing for me. And that is, after I describe that, I'd have a brief meeting with each of you. And the question is, if the other was willing to go with that set of arrangements, would you? And if the answer is no, what massaging or fine tuning would be necessary to create agreeability? Right. So what happens is you get the folks to make big leaps to consider the centralized possibility and consider what fine tuning of that would be acceptable. So we sometimes have a refined reference point, but typically elegant way of the folks resolving the disputes. I'm mentioning that. That's at the end. That's the last tool out of my toolbox. I want to mention one other thing too. When you're working with ChatGPT, there's a tendency for us to be speaking both as mediators and the parties from their normal, everyday, subjective state of mind. You know, what do you see as fair? What do you want? Okay. They're coming from present person, place, and time. Okay. And in fact, if you keep talking to them, you get a lot of regurgitation in that frame. But we can ask them different frames. For example, we can say, I want you to imagine that you're a mediator right now. Okay? I can remove them to my perspective. I could say, I want you to imagine that you're a fly on the wall. You're not any fly, you're Zen fly. You are the most wise fly. You have the wisdom of the ages. You've seen it all. You know all. What do you think is a piece of homework Zen Fly would suggest as a set of arrangements you could both support? Or I could do a triple dissociation, removing them in place, time, and person. And I could say, folks, I want you to imagine for a moment that you're looking at this situation from your kid's eyes. And not today, 10 years from now at Sammy's high school graduation. And Sammy and Emily are talking to one another about how you guys went through the divorce and the divorce mediation and the agreements that you came up with. What do you want your kids to be able to say in 10 years about how you manage these things? And what would be the understandings that you could come to now that would allow them to say those great things, right? So my only point here is when you're asking a AI engine, ChatGPT, or other questions, you could say, imagine that you're a child of this divorce, you know, or imagine that you're the one who's concerned that she won't have retirement. You know, you can take on any perspective as you do your inquiry. Okay. No limit, but your own creativity. Here's some of those hypothesis testing questions. This is just moving on where I'm curious. Is what I'm hearing, might it be possible? Maybe willing to consider, perhaps something along the lines of, you know, if they were willing to consider, might you be willing? If they were willing to do, might you be willing to do? Are there any things you'd be willing to give and get? You know, what package deals do you think you might both be able to support? Are they going to be able to answer that last question on the spot in real time? No, that's got to be a piece of homework for them to chew on, and they don't mind doing it because it doesn't cost them a penny. So some good type of questions that you can use. And then finally, with doubt and dissonance, you know, what we're doing now is we're going to ultimately be comparing what's seemingly available in the mediation. And I usually say with World War III, okay, because that's typically the option, right? You know, why do we create doubt and dissonance? It's only because we need some measure of additional flexibility in the system. If we could get an agreement without turning up the heat, fine with me, just an aspirational agreement. I already warned you, do not turn up the heat on people without a rapport relationship in place. So you might need to schedule a whole caucus just to rebuild a relationship with one party so that you can ask the tough questions of them. Notice that both mediation and the decision-making power that parties have and doubt and dissonance, it always says people are comparing decisions, you know? So if they think World War III wouldn't be as bad as the available settlement, they're going to go with World War III. But if you discuss what World War III would really be about, not only for them, but for their kids and the extended family and the uncertainty and, you know, et cetera, suddenly we can shift the balance and they say, well, okay, if she'll come up another $100 or whatever it might be. But doubt and dissonance is based on the psychological concept that people are survivors. They will make the best decision that they perceive available. So we as mediators want to be sure that they understand all aspects of that, even re-examining both the attractiveness or not of the agreement, as well as what World War III might be like. And I will reoffer now my reference point process, because even amongst the most difficult cases, and I'm talking millions of dollars between them, a rapport-based, elegantly developed reference point where you truly are trying to optimize the results for each of them and do it in a relatively balanced way that they would both be most likely to support. And they get, you understand it, they get this is your best effort. Intriguingly, it also gives them the rationale to say okay and to move. We liked Jim. He was there. He really heard. He did everything he could. He said, the best he could imagine would be something like this. It's not what the other one's demanding. It's not what the lawyers are talking about. It seems doable. It seems survivable. It seems respectful. And so that's how I get closure. And there is no gap too big for the reference point process. Okay. And I'm never saying I think you should or I recommend that you. All right. So that's all I had. And I need to stop sharing. So, my biggest piece is the technology is at risk of creating too much distraction for us. It was that way with clunky email and clunky websites and it starts off being a little overwhelming and we're not really sure which way. But I'm convinced that the magic formula is automating those things that can be respectfully automated. All right. And the 13th commandment is don't ask for a divorce client for the same information twice. Okay. That's disrespectful already. Okay. And don't overwhelm them with it, have a metering of that. So do anything. If you can go ahead and get scheduling automated and it works and payment automated and it works, fantastic. In fact, I think they expect it at this point. All right. Then there's this huge issue of how do we apply AI? And the answer is it's potentially anywhere. It is our in-office consultant for anything that we might be considering doing, and also available to assist the people with homework. And then the final ingredient hasn't changed. It's the human touch for you as a mediator. And that's where this rapport thing just is so critical. I would offer you really got to work on the front end of your mediation. So you find that proper balance between caucus and joint. There's really a sense of trust, both individually as well as when they're working together. And I look forward to hearing back from people about how the scheduling of your mediations has changed. How much caucus, how much joint, how long are the caucuses? How does that change, over the course of a mediation, for example? And final little thing, because it is a critical business thing. With all this confusion, online, caucus, joint, blah, 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 I really want to endorse what Michael Ora was saying about price certainty. Now, you protect yourself by saying for this certain price, you get the package, no kids, no retirement, no house, the discount, and up to 3 or 4, whatever the barriers or the boundaries you want to do, you got to put it there. But don't have the charge by the hour be the way you work into the future. It is to some extent because you're meeting for a certain amount of time. So it may be X number of meetings of up to 8 hours or something like this. But give them price certainty. It's just what the marketplace demands at this point. And we're making a big mistake that the lawyers continue to make, which is to endlessly charge by the hour. And I think the price certainty, along with our trying to optimize results for people, are our best selling points as we move forward. So my final comments.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. All right. Always nice to hear your thoughts on this. Just puts everything in perspective. All right, let's get back to our dear clients. So, Chris and Jamie, as you might have noticed, they've changed their appearance again, and that's fine. That's their choice. Oops. Chris and Jamie are getting stuck. They've had a few mediations at this point, but they're unable to make progress on the coffee shop. And so they have turned to the mediator to say, we need we need some more solutions. We need help negotiating. Do you have a tool? Do you have something else? Because at this point, we don't know what to do. So we're going to look at some negotiation tools specifically around option generation. And to do that, I have asked my good friend Oladeji to come in. Professor Tiamu, how are you doing? And he will be sharing with us some tools on negotiation. His bio is incredible. He's an incredibly respected professor, and I'm Oladeji, I'm assuming that, let's see, it's probably mid-afternoon for you, so that means you've probably already done 100-mile bike ride and let's see, maybe a 20-mile run, something like that. Is that
You're
accurate?
forgetting the 20-mile swim.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
my fault, my fault.
20-mile swim.
Yeah, just an average day for you. Um,
Yeah, so well, thank you for the introductions, and it's always nice going on the heels of Jim. I think
you know,
Jimmy set this up really well, and for me, I'm here more or less to ask questions. I'm gonna try and present a few solutions, but it's very much on the inquiry phase for me, and I would also just be really curious what others think with some of the things I'm going to share. So let me start by sharing my screen. Hopefully you all see
we
one
see all
slide
your
now.
notes. Now we see the presenter view.
You see everything?
I see everything.
Oh, beautiful. Well, that's not what I intended, but let's see how this works. Let me end the show and go. What about now? Same
Yep.
thing?
Mhm.
Interesting. Okay. Well, why don't we just stick with, I don't know. Um, is anyone is anyone
Uh,
more tech savvy?
what happens if you just click the presenter button down in the bottom right, the
Uh,
simple one?
this one.
Yeah.
Same thing.
No, same thing. Never mind.
That's
Or
odd.
swap displays or use slideshow.
Oh, I think that's
I
it.
don't, is that it?
Is that it?
Yeah, it looks perfect now.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, so thank you for that. So I'm also recognizing that I guess I'm among the last or perhaps the last for today. And I guess I'm just really curious what others think about some of the things I'm going to share. So my focus is really on building off of what the hypo and example that Claire just shared. You know, what happens when when parties are negotiating, you know, really challenging topics where they feel like there's impasse. So maybe slightly different from Jim, mine is more focused on the negotiating perspective, which connects with the mediator's perspective, but it's more focused on the negotiating parties themselves. So, you know, we all know this family law, right? It really captures people sometimes at their worst, right? Many times family law negotiations are multi-issue, they're highly charged emotionally, and it almost always has long-term implications for the parties, right? So there's the short-term negotiation, but then there are also the long-term consequences. So I'm just curious about how artificial intelligence can make these negotiation processes smoother, less adversarial, and more equitable. So, you know, there are just three things in the 14, 13 minutes we have together that I'm going to chat on. So the first is, right, how AI and generative AI specifically, how we can improve negotiation settlement. And then the second is how AI can help parties to become better informed, not just less about their legal rights, more about how they can receive and engage in a negotiation that will lead to a beneficial outcome for them that meets their interests. And then I'm going to wrap up really talking about the pro se perspective, the unrepresented parties perspective. I might just now raise the question. I think AI is fundamentally reshaping what role counsel should have. And it's mostly because AI can replace some some skills that traditionally were specifically for counsel to provide to their client. And I think this is good. I think this is a good thing for especially for pro se parties. So let's just go to the first piece here. So with improving negotiated settlements, we're really focused on not just efficiency, but promoting collaboration, helping parties to reach negotiated settlements in a way that is less adversarial and avoids charged language, right? And so in family law disputes, in the absence of a mediator, especially, you can anticipate just how difficult and emotionally charged negotiating with custody, visitation, spousal support, child support, all of these things can be highly charged for both of the parties. And I think AI should and does currently have a important role to play. So the first is when it comes to sentiment analysis, really we're saying that parties will have charged feelings about what's going on, and AI can help de-escalate and identify emotionally charged language before they actually communicate it with their parties. Right, so you could imagine going into a party going into a negotiation with someone they've been married to for a long period of time, and they're thinking all of these thoughts, right? They're thinking, my spouse, my former spouse, they're a terrible person, never listened, always ignored me during our marriage. And they're saying or thinking, hopefully they're thinking, there's no way in hell I will allow you to cheat me again. I'm winning, you're losing. So you might say, well, this this probably isn't the best framing or best tone or best word selection if we want a collaborative process and if both parties want to, especially when children are involved, work and cooperate with each other for the long term. So it's not to ignore that both parties or one party could be feeling these emotions, but I think it's also the reality that there's nothing wrong with feeling the emotion, but it's best if that emotion isn't directly channeled to your counterpart. So I think there can be a role for for artificial intelligence in this position, and artificial intelligence could play a similar role to what a mediator might have done historically, what counsel might have done historically, right? So good counsel, we might say that they should think strategically about reframing charged language. And certainly for mediators, like how can we reframe from positions to interests? How can we reframe from adversariality to collaborative communication, right? So, for generative AI, we can just, with proper prompting, we can just type in a few things and say, yes, my counsel or my client is feeling these things, or I myself am feeling those things. But let's prompt generative AI to have a more collaborative tone when I actually communicate with my counterpart. And so this is something with, just very brief prompting, helping the parties to move away from this adversarial tone. And this is fully generated by AI. We see the tone shifts dramatically with proper prompting. They're saying, I felt unheard, ignored during our marriage. It was deeply frustrating for me, but I also want to move forward and ensure that we reach a fair resolution where we feel respected, treated equitably, right? There's the priority to find an outcome that reflects both our needs. And I hope we can work toward a solution that feels just for both of us. And notice, like this in our thoughts, right? If we are going into this negotiation or mediation and we've been married to someone for a long period of time and feeling betrayed, it might be hard to shift from our feelings and our thoughts to collaborative language. And I actually think that there is an important role for generative AI to help the parties, reframe some of the charged feelings they have, not to ignore those feelings, right? But to help them think through more collaborative less adversarial framings for the parties, right? And I think this is a really good example of that. So thinking about a just outcome, recognizing prior hurts, but also thinking about the future relationship, moving forward with your counterpart. With proper prompting, generative AI and a variety of different generative AI specific family law tools can help parties transition in this way. So the other piece is on becoming better informed. We want parties to be better informed before they start a negotiated settlement conversation. We want parties to feel like they have the tools, right, to reach collaborative agreements with their counterparts. And sometimes in family law mediations and negotiations, there can be these common situations where we just feel like the objective criteria can't be agreed upon between both parties, right? In my family law class that I'm teaching right now in Denver, I have my students try and find objective criteria between them and their counterparts. And oftentimes, especially when it's a really challenging simulation, the first thing they come back and tell me is that what disrupted a more collegial or less adversarial negotiation is the inability to find objective criteria. And I'm actually just curious and to get people's thoughts on the ways that generative AI, your favorite Gen AI tool, can actually serve as the objective criteria. Maybe both parties agree on what they want to prompt your favorite generative AI tool, right? So maybe there's some degree of accepting what generative AI believes is objective without removing the parties from the actual process, right? Instead of we're at loggerheads, we can't agree on what is a fair criteria. Is it possible that the parties could just agree on what is a fair prompt for generative AI, and that fair prompt could help the parties go beyond this criteria impasse, right? So that's party to party. And I also think a mediator could allow the parties to engage with generative AI in this sense, where generative AI is providing objective criteria that the parties both agree to in the prompt. And the second piece in terms of becoming better informed, I think generative AI can and should be an assistant, right? If we aren't using Gen AI today in our own individual practices, I think we're missing a lot of value. And certainly for parties, without generative AI, they're missing out on some degree of value. So how can this assistant tool help parties better understand what could be fair, reasonable in the given context, right? So this is another example. Let's say they're going into this negotiation or mediation. They know that they have a variety of joint assets, and they're thinking about how should these joint assets be distributed as a result of the divorce proceedings. And so they might say, and this is a simple example, but there's a jointly owned home, jointly owned cars, right? There's some estimates on how much those assets are worth today. And if you are a party trying to be better informed on this, you just type in, with your favorite Gen AI tool, and in all likelihood, it's going to provide you with a variety of different options, right? Different options where in moving in the direction of fairness, moving in the direction of equity, moving in the direction of both parties feeling like they are better off, or at least not worse off as a result of the process, right? And Claire, with my final few minutes, I'll just say, right, how should we be thinking about more tailored approaches? Yes, Gen AI can help us to just find a variety of different options when we type in specific assets that are jointly owned with our partner or former spouse. We might be thinking about more tailored approaches. And this is something that your favorite Gen AI tool would actually ask you back if you are seeking options. it would ask you for more tailored or for more information so it can provide a more tailored approach to a variety of different things, right? And I think the next stage in this, which many family law and law specific tools are working on, the next stage in this is as a predictive tool to better understand what your BATNA would be if you don't reach a mediated settlement with your counterpart, right? How likely, or, you know, how likely is it for Judge XYZ to distribute assets in this particular way? How would Judge XYZ think about distribution in this particular way based on prior determinations? Westlaw, LexisNexis today, they both have these tools with some degree of predictive analytics for how a particular judge typically decides, right? And I think that is the next stage that only helps pro se unrepresented parties. The next question is, Gen AI asking, would you like to learn more about relevant case law in your jurisdiction, right? All of these are all tools that a unrepresented party could have. And I think historically would have been a major asset, right? And would have cost a massive premium to get this information. So, I mostly just have questions. We have potential opportunities. We have really exciting opportunities with generative AI. I have questions in terms of for the fairness, for the user experience, right? How can some of these tools be better integrated and more accessible to parties so that they can be better informed and have less adversarial processes when they engage in family law negotiations? Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me stop sharing. All right.
There we go. All right. Thank you, Oladeji. Yeah, you raised some really interesting questions that I'll definitely be thinking about. So we are definitely moving into a new world. What is the experience like for clients? And I think a lot of us are very protective of this experience for our clients, right? We want to make sure that they feel heard, they feel empowered, that they feel like they have enough information to reach an informed decision. And we want to make sure we're still doing that they are validated and reframed correctly, even with using these tools. So thank you. Really interesting conversation. I want to just add a couple pieces to this, if that's okay.
Please.
So here are some other negotiation tools that we're aware of. I really like this Nibble AI, and this follows perfectly with what you were just saying, because what I like about Nibble AI is because I feel like it's just user friendly, right? It has a cute name and it just kind of follows that through the whole thing. It's not scary. It's just easy. It's warm for clients to get in and upload their interests, and they can easily say, this is how important this is to me, or this is only 10% important, or this is 80% important. And then it just helps them to reach some possible solutions. This is fairly client driven. And so if you have clients that are very well informed, that are self-aware, that are getting along well, this might work really well for them. If not, you probably want to use something like Next Level Mediation. So that was the Bob Bergman tool that he showed us earlier, where the mediator has more control, right? The mediator gets to put in some of the parties' interests and manage that process a little bit more. I also want to mention these other ones. So there's Silver Decisions. This is a decision tree analysis tool. It's a little bit older. It's a little bit clunkier. That being said, the logic behind it is very transparent. So I like it because I can instantly see what it's doing and how it arrives at a conclusion. But it's, it just, you can tell, right? It just feels a little long in the tooth. Then there's also, if you're connected with AAA, they have their Clause Builder AI. This is built off of all of their cases and their settlements. So they have a very finite and tested data set. And then mediators and arbitrators can use this tool when a case gets stuck, just to help them to generate some language here. If we can't decide on who's selling who's going to sell the coffee shop or buy the coffee shop, then here are some suggestions for clauses that we've seen in previous cases. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Smart Settle or Smart Settle 1 that's been around 20 years at this point, 25 years, right? It's quite a while. And the latest iteration of it is pretty impressive. And then finally, if you're looking for something that's a little bit more open source, we have negotiate.ai. A good thing about negotiate.ai is it just does a great job at protecting your client's information. So there's more of a barrier to entry for your clients to get in and use it. But once they're in there, then they feel very safe. They feel very protected. So for what it's worth, here are some other negotiation tools. So, all right. So we began the day by talking about marketing, and we made it all the way through here to meeting. So let's check in with Chris and Jamie. They're feeling educated. They've been able to access these chatbots. They have gone to your website. They have listened to your podcasts. They've read the summary of your articles. So they're feeling very empowered. They have access to solution explorers. We'll look at some more of those tomorrow. And so they're feeling in control, right? They've been able to use these negotiation tools to try out different options. And they're feeling now like they're on track. They're starting to feel a sense of hope. And what we like about that, right, is when people feel that sense of hope, then they bring that peace home. And then, like we were looking at with our family wizard, they also have the resources to explain what's going on to their children, right? So that their children aren't feeling pushed aside, but that their children can be made aware of what's going on through this whole process. So today we looked at training. We're going to push quite a bit of website stuff to tomorrow. So we only touched on website. We'll do a lot more tomorrow. Marketing, intake, scheduling, document, prepping clients, format, negotiation. Then we'll begin tomorrow with website and then move into intimate partner violence, ethics, bias, and then finally, what do we do after the mediation? So this will look at drafting, marital settlement agreement, invoicing, ongoing marketing, some of those pieces. So we've covered quite a bit today. Let me just do a quick check-in with everyone. I know this was a lot. I know it's going to take quite a few days for all of this to settle and for you to decide what to do next. But I just wanted to do a quick check-in. Are people feeling excited, overwhelmed, like this is too risky and it's too scary?
It is it's just more, it is very exciting. That shows how much I didn't know.
I think it is exciting, right? It's an adventure.
And how much the technology is assisting us without forgetting the human touch, as Jim was mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
And we should not ignore that part of our work.
Right.
But it's very exciting, and I'm so glad that I'm taking this class,
Good.
this conference. Thank you.
I'm so glad. And Maury, I'm so glad that you said that because I completely agree. I think that all of this should serve to just make the mediation experience more human, right? So that we can bring more of ourselves to the table, so that I'm not distracted by all of the admin tasks and the data entry things that I have to do and remembering, did I invoice them? Did I send out that text? Did I post my LinkedIn thing? I want an AI to take care of all of that so I can sit and be fully present with my parties, right? So they can feel me holding space for them and validate what they're going through. And I do think that that makes me a better mediator. I don't think it replaces me. I hope it makes me better. Yeah. Brian.
There we go. As a sole practitioner, I'm excited by the possibilities. I'm intrigued by what the next few years are going to bring, but I'm also worried about the possible startup costs for a small business who is already spending a great deal of time doing it the old way. How can I invest in changing the way I do things, get past the startup period, and begin using this efficiently?
Yeah. Start with free chat GPT. That's what I would do, 100%.
I have it.
Yeah. We're going to be spending some time on it tomorrow, just making sure that everybody feels really comfortable with it. But, there's a lot of other free options. Um, the free version of Trevor AI, of Crystal Knows, I really like those. There's a free version of Invoicer.ai that we'll look at tomorrow. And so I think the startup cost can still be very small. And especially for solo practitioners, I think this is the only way that you can become competitive. You know,
Actually, it's not the financial startup costs, it's the cost in time,
the time.
relearning, this old dog learning new tricks, etc.
So here, let me say one thing and then I'll hand it on to you. I would strongly recommend, and maybe somebody mentioned if we could do a listserv or we all stay in contact. I would strongly recommend that we just take this one piece at a time, right? Maybe we start with intake and then we do marketing and then we do scheduling. And wouldn't it be great if we could all have a conversation about that, just saying, okay, I think I'm going to try this scheduling tool. Who has tried it? How's it working? What suggestions do you have?
Claire, my suggestion, because it would create more work for you, it rolls off my tongue so easily. I think a monthly consultation group,
I think so.
people get together and we stay in touch.
Yeah.
Identifying the winners, the really quality pieces is great. Identifying things that are not worth the effort. But what's going on right now is we're all overwhelmed, with the possibilities, and it's hard to know where you start, you know. And so maybe we could have a little discussion about, what do you want to do? And maybe these are the first three steps. But
Yeah.
I think things are evolving so quickly that we should take advantage of the online environment and just have a hour-long monthly
I like that.
call. And the other thing I'll say, initially I thought it was kind of optional for mediators to become familiar and savvy about this stuff, but I'm starting to think about qualifications criteria now. I mean, it I've always had trouble with mediators becoming qualified at one time for all time, as if we're not even communicating in the same way anymore. It used to be printed pages through the mail, and now what's that, and it's all online. And now we're getting unbelievable, powerful opportunity for AI to make everybody better and to make things better informed and the like. So I think as a field that we almost have an obligation to update and elevate our expectations about mediators staying on top of technology and AI specifically, because for me, it's a total game changer. I'll also say one other thing. When John Healy and I got started, one of the really powerful motivators was we wanted mediators and mediation to really be on top of technology and take advantage of this email and these websites and this World Wide Web and get it. And because we knew we could beat the attorneys, because the attorneys just don't like change and the courts are even worse than them. So I see another grand opportunity for mediation, which is already intrinsically built around trying to find optimizing solutions. That's the essence of mediation, is people having the opportunity, the safe, confidential, controlled opportunity to identify possible optimized or at least controlled solutions. And this is a huge opportunity for our field. It's massive. It will allow us to better empower our parties than ever before, and it'll make us better too. And it'll give us access to new and different, deeper, wider perspectives on the issue. So, Oladaji, I love your piece about assisting people to be as good as they can be. And we know early on in a negotiation, especially phraseology, it can be everything. I mean, people actually know each other's hot button words, for example. So it's really about helping us all, mediators, parties, the world, be as good as we can be. And if we're carrying that flag, we need organizing concepts socially for our country, internationally, and having a first best opportunity to come up with optimizing solutions should be a part of our future thinking and infrastructure. So I think this is an opportunity for a mediative mindset to really to flourish, and that AI can help fuel it, and that we have an unbelievable capacity now to support our participants becoming as capable as they can be in their negotiations. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Before I close, yeah, somebody else wanted to.
Yeah, I would just mention that it's not just about AI. There's underlying mathematics to, understanding people's priorities, predictive analytics. A lot of that is just mathematics. And game theory. There's a lot of other techniques you can use. So AI is a kind of a broad category, but I would say that just remember that technology doesn't replace people. People who know how to use technology might replace you, but not the
Yeah,
technology.
that's
And
good.
so just keep that in mind.
That's good. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Ron, and then let's close up.
Claire, I just want to give you and Jim and Colin a plug and mediate.com. I always look to you all because you all are in the forefront of what's going on in mediation and technology. And you with these classes and seminars that you have and the weekly emails that you send out, I look to you all to keep me informed and up to date on the latest and greatest of what's happening in mediate.com. I mean, mediation. And I just I want you to know that I appreciate you all and what you do to keep us knowledgeable and relevant. And I want to thank you for what you do.
Thank you. It's pretty fun. We get paid to just play with tech tools all day and figure out what works and what doesn't. So thank you. We feel pretty lucky. Okay. I know that you thought, oh, my brain is done. I can't wait to just veg out the rest of the night. But wait, you don't get to. Let me ask you to just do one piece of homework. And that is, I want you to try out one AI tool tonight that you haven't used before. And I will do the same thing. Let's just try out something new. And even if you're just putting in the simplest of prompts, like give me a agreement to mediate template, something like that. But try out one new tech tool, and then when we meet again first thing tomorrow, we're going to talk about it, see how it went, and specifically where the hiccups are, so we can all work with each other to brainstorm those. All right. So thank you, everyone. I will be getting all of these links available online on that website, and I'll check in with you in the morning and make sure that you all have access to it. So one bit of homework, go try out something new, and other than that, go get away from the computer. Go rest your eyes and brain for a little bit.
Thank you, Claire. Great
All
job.
right. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you soon.